Do you want to learn English and have a laugh at the same time? Well, don't worry. We've got you covered because in this episode of the English Right Now podcast, Rob and I are talking about 10 British comedies that will make you laugh and also teach you a lot about British culture and British English. And of course, joining me, I've already given away the spoiler, is my dear friend Rob. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Roy. Hi, everybody out there. How's your day?
Marvelous. How's yours?
Good, good. You picked a really good topic for today, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I love to laugh and I love comedy. I mean, there are so many British comedies that we could talk about. We've narrowed it down to 10. We struggled to narrow it down because there were so many options. But yeah, I love it. I mean, do you prefer British comedy? Do you prefer any American comedy, or are you quite balanced in general?
No, I'm a big fan of British comedy, I have to say. I think we've got quite a good reputation for comedy, not just on TV, but I think the Brits in general are renowned for their sense of humour, maybe their sarcasm as well, but their sense of humour. And I find that's reflected in lots of our TV shows. So yeah, I do like the British comedy, to be honest. I like to laugh at myself, basically.
Don't worry, I laugh at you as well. Self-deprecation, that humor is fantastic. So and there's lots of great forms of British humor. And by the way, do let us know in the comments what your favorite British comedy is. Please do let us know. Do you agree with our top 10? Do you disagree? That's fine. Everybody's got an opinion. And if you do want to learn more about British culture, by the way, we've got a brand new course out. It's called What the British Say versus What We Actually Mean. There's things about British humor, British history, lots of different things. You can find out more in the links below. But now, Rob, number one, I'll let you go first. What is your first? Of course, they're in no particular order, but which comedy do you think students out there will love and learn from?
Okay, well, let's go back to the 1970s. Do you remember the 1970s?
No,
probably not. No.
I've heard of them.
But it's still popular. It's an old TV sitcom, situation comedy called Fawlty Towers, starring John Cleese, who's a great British comedian. And this was set in a hotel in Torquay, sort of seaside town, Torquay, down in Devon. And this is the story of the very frustrated manager, Basil Fawlty, who's managing this hotel with his nagging wife. And of course, things go wrong all the time, but he just wants things to be perfect. And when they don't go as planned or to his standards, he gets really frustrated, and it's really funny. And there's some classic lines in there as well.
Yeah. This is one of my favorites of all time. Now, I don't remember the 70s, but I did grow up on a diet of the Fawlty Towers. I absolutely love John Cleese. I'm going to be talking a bit more about John Cleese in my choice. One thing I would say that's really, really amazing about this show and about British comedy in general, you said there the nagging wife. And sometimes, you can sort of say nagging is when you're this kind of endless complaining. And he sort of paints her out. Sybil, isn't it? I think it's Sybil Fawlty. He paints her to be a kind of a dragon. But actually, when you analyze the comedy, they are both they've got a lot of faults, both of them. The Basil Fawlty, who is the owner, John Cleese, he's very uptight. He gets overly stressed. And the reason that she nags is because he doesn't always do things right. So she's basically trying to get him to do things right. So they are both quite flawed characters. And I think that's what's really clever about it.
Yeah, flawed. That's a good word. Flawed. Lots of kind of mistakes in their character. They're not perfect, are they, at all? And it's funny, we're still talking about this show now. I think only about 6 episodes were made, but they were shown again and again and again. And I'm sure you can find them on YouTube now because it's just the classic British comedy and their classic British characters that, look a bit like me or you. And interestingly, if you ever come to London, it's now a stage show as well, a West End stage show, Fawlty Towers.
Is it really?
Hmm.
Is it really? I think there might have been 12 episodes, 2 series. Okay. So you've got double the excitement. I just checked there. There are 12 episodes in total. I don't know if you know this, but the Americans, they tried to remake Fawlty Towers.
Ever
Did
seen
they?
it? No.
It was awful. It was absolutely awful because whoever produced it missed the point. They made Basil perfect, like this really cool guy. And his wife was just a horrible human being. And it was just so unbalanced. So it kind of missed the point that the main character was also flawed. So in the American one wasn't funny because it was just basically an aggressive wife with a perfect
Yeah.
man who's cool. It doesn't work.
And I say it's classic British humor because it highlights all the kind of nuances of our character, the things we say or feel embarrassed about, or things that we wouldn't normally do, which in America they might do normally. So it's not so funny.
I can remember him hitting the car with a tree. That's an iconic scene. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Only 12 episodes. A lot of British TV series, they end quite quickly. But I'm going to move on to my first pick, and it's also going back in time, and also with John Cleese. It is Monty Python, Monty Python's Flying Circus, and the Monty Python films. The TV show in particular was completely. It had a lot of absurdist comedy. It had quite a surreal element to it. It was very weird humor for the time. There was also a lot of satire in there. It was talking about class-based humor, things like that, sort of making fun of the upper class, the lower class, these kind of things. But there was so Monty Python's Flying Circus was a series of sketches. They were a series of individual short comedy pieces. That's what a sketch show is. It's short comedy. Sometimes they can be repeated characters in certain ones, but more in Monty Python, it was quite different every time. And there's some iconic sketches in there. I showed my wife the other day The Dead Parrot.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? where basically somebody sells John Cleese a parrot, and he goes in to complain because he says this parrot's dead. And the guy behind it is Michael Palin. He's like, he's not dead. He's just sleeping.
Yeah.
And he's banging it on the deck. It's brilliant. Iconic comedy. And some of it is very unusual. But in general, it's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I can imagine it's not for everybody.
No, it's an acquired taste. But I think, again, we're still talking about it because people still quote lines from Monty Python, don't they? I think why it was so special at the time, it was different from the traditional sitcoms we used to have, which was, set at home. People would laugh every joke, even though it wasn't funny. They got rid of all the laughter, didn't they? And it was just, here's our random line of sketches. You decide if you like it or not. And it was a lot of it was unexpected as well. It wasn't that sort of formulaic comedy. It was a bit what do we call left field?
Yeah, it was very out there. Out there is a good way to say it. It was like very sort of far away from what would be normal. Out there. And I love it though. I absolutely love it, and particularly the films. And they're still very quotable. So, what have the Romans ever done for us? This kind of thing. It's absolutely
nobody likes the Spanish Inquisition, or everyone fears the Spanish Inquisition.
Oh, it was so random at times, and for the time, for when it came from, it was just so different to everything else. I mean, there are a few very notable sketch shows from around that era, like the Two Ronnies. And things like that. And then a bit later on, Not the 9 o'clock News and things like this. And Drop the Dead Donkey was another show that came later on. But for me, Monty Python, it opened up the door to some really unusual forms of humor. And that's why I absolutely recommend it. What's your second choice?
Good choice. Well, I'm going back to a bit more of a traditional sitcom again, but it's still a classic British comedy. And this is Only Fools and Horses. Which ran for years and years, also became a stage show because it was so popular. It was just a funny goings on about this guy, Del Boy, who lived in a council flat in a poor part of London. He was basically trying to make some money all the time. And he had his family around him. They're all very different characters. But of course, he's always trying to make money and always things go wrong. And it was very funny. But again, has some very classic lines there.
And not only classic lines, but classic kind of physical comedy as well. I remember where he leans on the bar and he disappears because the bar isn't there. And if there's a line that British people will always quote, you'll say, this time next year, finish it for me.
We'll all be millionaires. Can't even say
millionaires, as he said. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. And it's such a classic line that most British people, if you say, this time next year, somebody will chip in with, we'll be millionaires. It's a bit like To Me, To You. That one seemed to land very well. But yeah, I love Only Fools and Horses. It's very, very funny. Lots of great characters. Flawed characters again. Del Boy, as you say, or Derek Trotter, is a wheeler dealer. this is somebody who buys things cheaply and tries to sell them on. It's like this kind of idea, market trader selling down the markets. And it was just brilliant. It was him, his brother, his uncle. His uncle was like a sort of an old Navy veteran that never quite been a good
He always
example.
told always told stories about his old days, but they were quite unbelievable, really. But
Back in my day, Dale boy.
Yeah, they all lived in this small flat as well, so that was quite funny. They
Yeah.
were living in a high-rise building, quite high up in Peckham in southeast London. It's also a good way, by the way, if you are learning English, of hearing a dialect, so you get that sort of southeast London accent there. No, it's not pure RP; it's very kind of working class.
Definitely, the first two choices, Monty Python and Fawlty Towers, to a certain extent, had a lot of examples of RP and modern RP, what became modern RP. But Only Fools, you're absolutely right. And I think what was beautiful about Only Fools and Horses, it perhaps went on for a bit too long, too many seasons towards the end. Some people may disagree. But I think it was also nice that we saw the characters progress. Him, his brother, they got married, they had kids, so on, so on, so on. So it was really nice to see these characters growing as well. That's what I loved as well. And there were lots of good side characters like Boise and Trigger. Really, really funny characters.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Anyway, that's my choice. Your turn now, Roy.
Well, you've picked a good one. So I'm going to go with the Inbetweeners. Okay, so the Inbetweeners is such a quotable TV series. It's basically about 4 teenagers at school, and it really gives you an idea of the British education system in a lot of ways, state school. And it's about this main character is a guy called Will, who was at private school, and basically for one reason or another, I think it's financial, he has to go into state school. So he's still carrying his kind of briefcase round, and he's being a very kind of they paint him as quite posh, but sort of blending in and meeting these characters. There's 4 main characters. They are absolutely brilliant. The humor is phenomenal, but for me, it takes me back to that. It was very, very accurate in sort of a representation of my school experience in a lot of ways. The humor at times is very absurd. Not absurd. The humor at times is very.
I was saying crude. You could call it crude sometimes. Yeah.
It's a bit rude. It's a bit crude. But I absolutely adore it. And some of the humor, some of the jokes are a bit weird. They're a bit funny, but it's very, very quotable. For example, friend, have you got a friend? So like there's somebody talking about this new friend, and then the other one just chips in with friend, you got a friend, and it is this exact idea of what teenagers are like, teasing each other. And that line is brilliant. There are some rude moments in it, I'm not going to lie. But they make films.
Let's say they're all desperate to get girlfriends, aren't they? In
yeah,
in one way or another. There's not much romance involved, and also they had a spin-off. 2 films came out of that series, the Inbetweeners movies. They were really funny as well. Where they all went on holiday together. Yeah,
they were. I think first one was in Australia, and the other one was in Ibiza, wasn't it, or somewhere like that, or some kind of.
Yeah,
Iron Apple was it? Yeah, they were absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it was basically teenagers trying to get laid. Get laid means have sex. It's an informal way to say basically what teenagers try to do: try to get alcohol, get served at a pub, and meet girls. And that was basically while also growing up and passing and getting through school. It was a brilliant thing. The humor was spot on, and the character, the casting, i.e., the giving the actors the job, perfect in my opinion. I love it. Very, very funny. Now it's time for your number 3. Go on then.
Okay. Well, my choice, a bit more recent, is a series called The Office. The Office. Ooh. It was set in an office in a kind of small town. Well, yeah, a suburb of London, really, called Slough. Very boring place to work. It was a very boring location, the office, but it was just the different characters working in an office. David Brent was the office manager, played by Ricky Gervais. And it was just about awkwardness, really, in the office. You know, all these things were going on, and they never went right. The manager, again, a bit like Fawlty Towers, really, and the manager of the hotel. This time, the manager of the office, he had a set way of doing things. He wanted things to work in a certain way. They never did, and it was all very awkward. Everything was very awkward. Very British, though, you know, to be awkward like that.
Yeah, and you've hit that word several times. Awkward. It was a very uncomfortable form of comedy. I really enjoyed it. They made an American version, which was very, very successful as well. It did its own little thing.
Mm.
The American Office was brilliant as well, I have to say. Quite often when things get remade, either British versions of American shows or American versions of they don't always land very well. In other words, they don't always get well received. To land means to be received in that sense. They don't always land really well, but the American Office was brilliant, and the British Office was also brilliant. It was really pushing that element of uncomfortable comedy and making you almost cringe. There was the romance between the receptionist and the guy that worked in the office.
Yeah.
There was this uncomfortable kind of awkward romance where the girl had a boyfriend, but it wasn't very nice, and the guy had a crush on her, and he would always say things like, and it would get close, but then it always made you want to cringe and almost make ugh. And David Brent was a very cringe-worthy character. In other words, they make you cringe. Cringe is that feeling of just being a bit uncomfortable, a bit almost dirty.
Yeah. He
And
wanted to kind of he wanted to, of course, he wanted to be the manager and control things, but also he wanted to be down with the office workers, and he was trying to keep in with them all the time, and that became very awkward as well. You know, the interesting thing is, I know this is complete fiction, The Office, but you see some similarities between your workplace, and you think, oh, my manager's a bit like that, or that character's a bit like that. So there's some similarities, and that's probably what makes it funny as well.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's that moment with the dance where he does a dance, and everybody's in a circle, and he does a really uncomfortable dance, like really awkward body movements, and it's just so uncomfortable. And there are so many things about it, and it's funny because it puts you into a position of being a bit uncomfortable. I'm going to give some honorable mentions as well about Ricky Gervais because I think he's really, really funny. I like his stand-up comedy. He's done some brilliant things. He did Extras, which I think was amazing. He did An Idiot Abroad, which is more him talking with Carl Pilkington. I think is brilliant. And he's branched out away from comedy. It was a dark comedy at times. Afterlife. Have you ever seen Afterlife?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've seen all the episodes. Yeah.
In The Office, he's very uncomfortable humor. In Afterlife, it's dark humor. It's about a guy grieving for his dead wife, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's a real masterpiece of television, in my opinion.
And the comedy again, the comedy in all those programs you mentioned, again, it's all about awkwardness, isn't it? And he does this so well. It's about an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah. And I love it. That's not my third choice, by the way, but I'm just highly recommending that as a bonus. So my third choice is Spaced. So this is one of my favorite TV shows ever made. It was made by Simon Pegg, who played Tim. That's where I got that name from. And Jessica something, and she played Daisy, and it's again 12 episodes, 2 series. They didn't make any more, and it's about 2 people who, for reasons, get made homeless. One splits up with his girlfriend, and the girl basically has to leave a place, and they're looking for flats. They're flat hunting in London, which is really difficult, and they eventually find an advert in a paper that says couples only. So then they pretend to be a couple. And the reason that I love it, not only is the humor very fast paced, it's very quick. The dialogue is very, very, has a lot of banter in it. Banter is this idea of this back and forth. I remember this thing where a guy's saying, oh, there's a party. It's going to be a bit awkward, but my ex is going to be there. And then one of the characters says, are you going to go? And then the guy says, well, I don't know. It's going to be a bit weird, isn't it? And he went, no, you're going to go, as in now. Are you going to leave? It was this kind of humor, like really, really clever humor, but it also relied a lot on parody and referencing films like Star Wars, Jurassic Park. Lots of different film references were in there, particularly sci-fi and kind of that kind of genre. And it's absolutely brilliant. Simon Pegg once said that they tried to do the uncomfortable humor, but The Office did it better. But in my opinion, Spaced very much did its own thing. Have you seen this?
I have seen it. Yes. I mean, Simon Pegg is great, isn't he? He's been in lots of comedy films since then. but this was his kind of starter, I suppose. It was very funny from the 90s. We go back to the 90s. Yeah.
Late 90s, I think late 90s, early 2000s, maybe around that period. And then, of course, as you say, went on to do films like Shaun of the Dead, which is a zombie parody. He did Hot Fuzz, The World's End, and now he's in Mission Impossible as Benji.
Yes, that's right. I'll say he's in some big Hollywood blockbuster films like that one. Yeah.
He was in Star Trek as well as Scotty, I think, the remakes of the new Star. But also, I've got to say, as an honourable mention, before we move on, Big Train is a sketch show that Simon Pegg was in. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really random humour again. I absolutely love it. Big Train is one to look out for. I love it.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. What's your fourth?
Right. Well, I'm going to go for a sketch show called Little Britain. It was on several years ago, starring two very funny men, Matt Lucas and David Walliams, who went on to write lots of children's books and do lots of other stuff. But that was their first big comedy hit. Again, it was slightly different from before. So lots of sketches, so lots of short little comedy sketches.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily have a punchline to them. It was just a funny action and lots of catchphrases. Do you remember that show?
I loved it. I enjoyed. Well, again, it was uncomfortable at times, but what it was meant to be, I think, what I love about it is it was a snapshot of British life. So it was like a series of characters. Some of them, I think, if they remade it today, they wouldn't be able to do some of the characters they did. Some of them were very would probably upset the modern world as it is, I think.
What we'd say is non-PC, not politically correct. Yes.
For its time, it was brilliant. But there are some examples of that. In Fawlty Towers, you've got a English guy playing a Spanish waiter, which could also upset modern audiences. So you need to think that a lot of these things are of their time. But the thing is, there were so many quotable references in Little Britain, like "Computer says no." And that is one that sits with me for my entire life. Because sometimes when you go to receptions and you try and get something done, they go, computer says no. And it's that idea that basically it's not going to happen. But Little Britain gives you an idea of British life, or like the terrible aspects of British life, I think.
Well, yes. Don't take it for real. It's take it with a pinch of salt, I think.
Take it with a pinch of salt is a great way to say don't take it too seriously. That's brilliant. Yeah.
Very funny. Very funny. So, Roy, I think it's your turn now.
Okay, so I find this difficult which one I'm going to go with next, but I think I'm going to have to go with Blackadder.
Good choice.
Blackadder. Oh, thank you. Blackadder was brilliant. It stars Rowan Atkinson, of course, who played Mr. Bean. Although Mr. Bean, I know it's very popular in some countries. It wasn't my sense of humor, if I'm totally honest. I enjoyed Mr. Bean, but Blackadder was absolutely brilliant. It showed how amazing Rowan Atkinson is as a comedic actor and a character actor. He was absolutely brilliant. So the first series is set in like the Middle Ages, then it's set in different time periods. There are 4 series, and I think there's a spin-off as well. There are 4 series. Basically, the first one is in like the Middle Ages, and he plays this kind of sniveling prince who's very sarcastic, very dry-humored, and very kind of cranky. I think in the first season he's not as. I think in the first few episodes he's not as developed as he becomes. In the season 2 and season 3, he becomes very much more that sarcastic character, and he has this sidekick called Baldric, who's seen as a bit stupid and a bit thick. And he always says that, and the sidekick says, "I have a cunning plan, my lord." And he always plays this. Rowan Atkinson always plays this character in the aristocracy, some kind of rich person, but not the top. He's kind of always under somebody, another lord or something like this. And it's absolutely brilliant humor. And I think the 4th season for me stands out because it's set during World War One, and it is an amazing series. Of course, that was a very dark time in history, of course, in the trenches. But there's still a lot of humor. Like there's a major or a character above called Darling, something Darling, Major Darling or Captain Darling, and Blackadder always says, "Hello, darling." And it was this kind of humor. It was very, very humorous. occasionally Blackadder would get a bit aggressive with Baldrick. But what strikes me is British comedy at its best is when it can flip very quickly to something serious or make a serious point. And the end of season 4 of that World War one was just amazingly moving. You went from laughing to almost crying, and it was just incredible. Do you remember the ending?
Yeah, I do. Yes,
It
very
was just,
moving, very poignant end there, wasn't it? Yeah, we didn't,
yeah.
as you say, we didn't end laughing, did we?
No, it was. But again, I still would say it's one of the greatest TV comedies. It's very sarcastic. If you want to learn sarcasm, then this one will really help you with that. And of course, there's a few other kind of forms of humor in there, but mainly Blackadder is arguably the most sarcastic character you could hope for.
I was going to say, I mean, yeah, sarcasm. I think that's the bedrock of British comedy, really. Sarcasm really gets people laughing. Also, it's a very not really in depth, quite a simple history lesson of Britain as well. So it does go through the history of Britain, doesn't it? Even though it's not perhaps factually correct all the way through. Some of the characters actually existed in history. Yeah,
I think season 2 is in the Elizabethan period. And you've got like the Queen, and she's such a almost petulant, almost like a child. Like,
yes, that's right.
A very brilliant actors, and you've got Flash, played by Rick Mail. Oh my goodness, Rick Mail. We could have gone about Rick Mail. How many series was the young ones? And later on, what was that other series called? Bottom. Absolutely brilliant. Rick Mail. My goodness, they're all coming to mind now. No, we could have done the top 20. But I love Blackadder for its pure sarcasm and its pure joy. We're moving on to number 5 for you.
Yes.
Go on.
Well, I have to say, Blackadder was a very good choice. Do check that out. Again, I'm sure you can see bits of it on YouTube. But my final choice is something more contemporary. Gavin and Stacey. Now, this ran for several years, and it finished with a big Christmas special last Christmas, which brought all the storylines together and was very popular. It was the most watched TV show last Christmas, I think, actually. But Gavin and Stacey is a story about these two characters, Gavin and Stacey. One lives in Essex, sort of east of London. Again, you can listen for an Essex accent, which isn't RP at all. And he falls in love with a girl called Stacey, who lives in Wales. She has a very strong Welsh accent. So again, not RP, very strong Welsh accent. And it's basically about their relationship, their long distance relationship. But of course, there are other characters involved with this. So Gavin's got his best mate. Stacey's got her family. Her uncle lives across the road. So two very different families. And eventually you follow their life story, really, because they fall in love. Later on, they get married and have kids and stuff like this over a long period of time. And again, it's a very subtle comedy. It's not somebody telling you jokes. It's just a funny story, really. But also a lot of parallels from your own life. You go, oh yeah, I've been through that stage in life, and I've done that, and I've got an uncle like that. So yeah, it rings true sometimes of things that go on in your life. But very funny, very funny.
Very good, and some amazing actors like Rob Brydon in it. But absolutely brilliant comedy again. And it came out at a time when other ones like a pint of lager and 2 packets of Chris and whatever it was, pint of lager and 2 packets of Chris, or 2 pints of lager and a packet of Chris. Can't remember the name. You can put it on the put it there. Yeah, but it came out there, and it kind of just shone through as being a really good example of its time. And I'm remembering. Oh my goodness, I'm remembering so many others now. And before I tell you number 5, please do let us know your favorite in the comments below. Please do let us know what you recommend because it's good to share your opinions. And I've just thought about, oh my goodness, I've just thought about Mitchell and Webb. I've thought about Peep Show. I could have gone for Peep Show. That was a brilliant TV show, first person, very uncomfortable humor. There's a lot of Hale and Pace going back in the day. Yeah. Fry and Laurie, great sketch shows. Lots of really, really good things. And I'm going to give a few honorable mentions before I tell you my number 5. But two honorable three, in fact. Mighty Boosh is brilliant, very absurd, very weird, but a brilliant comedy that you should definitely check out. Garth Marenghi's Dark Places, or Dark Place, I think it is basically set in a hospital, and it's kind of it's sort of almost a document. It's a mockumentary, a fake documentary recording of a 1970s TV show, sci-fi TV show. It's completely absurd as well. And not to forget the IT crowd. The IT crowd, also brilliant, about IT people down in an office, down in the dark parts of an office. So three honorable mentions there. You know, if you've got any, please let me know. But like the number 5 I'm going to talk about for me is absolutely brilliant. And I'm going to say one thing. Aha!
Yes, Alan Partridge.
Alan Partridge! Alan Partridge! Oh my goodness. I nearly forgot to mention Alan Partridge. He's arguably one of my greatest, my favorite TV shows of all time. And I nearly forgot to put him on here. Alan Partridge started off in a TV. So Steve Coogan is a brilliant comedy actor, and he plays this character, Alan Partridge. He started off doing it in sketch shows. Then he made a then he became a TV host. This character became a TV host of a show called Knowing Me, Knowing You. And he would go, aha! Knowing me, knowing you, aha! And it was then basically in the world of Alan Partridge, this TV show got cancelled. And then he ended up on Radio Norfolk or Radio Norwich or something
local
like
radio
this.
station. That's right. Yeah.
He went from being in this big time big time kind of, it's probably a push. But it's following the life of this guy who's just fallen from grace. He's a little bit uncomfortable. He's a little bit awkward as a character. And like this, and there's so many quotable lines from it. Smell My Cheese is one where he's trying to get his show back in the first series of Alan Partridge. There's a lot of these series, as far as I know. Maybe 2 seasons of Alan Partridge and 2 seasons of Knowing Me, Knowing You are one of those. And it is absolutely brilliant because he's an uncomfortable character. You can hear a lot of accents in there, like there's a Geordie accent, Newcastle accent in one of the characters. And then he ends up living in a travel lodge, like this cheap budget hotel, living his life, trying to get his life back on track.
But he still has this old woman. He still has this woman who's his manager or agent.
Yeah,
who bosses around, and she's still trying her best to find him work and manage his life.
And he's horrible to her.
Yeah, he's so horrible. Yes, I know. It's funny. There's quite a parallel between him and Basil Fawlty. We're talking about right at the start, because he's this British guy. He wants to do well, but he doesn't have the right manners and etiquette. Really, his way. Yes, he's just awkward and rude.
And he name drops random people like Bill Oddie, who's like a celebrity from the 90s. But like, I absolutely love him. He's rude. He upsets everybody. He offends a lot of people. He's awkward. People just, he's on the radio insulting people accidentally, having arguments with people, and then people graffiti his car. He's just a beautifully flawed character that you want to basically never meet, but also you want to help him at the same time. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But there you go. And if you do want to learn more about the UK and how we really are, I've done a lesson on 12 ways that British people say sorry without actually trying to apologize. Check that lesson out here, and we'll see you in the next podcast.
Bye for now.